My name is Bill Snyder. This is the 12 Steps to Freedom podcast. Thank you for joining me today. The topic today is, I was talking to somebody that was, dealing with issues in life, addiction and everything, and I was talking to him today. I'm trying to help him a little bit, and that's what made me, we were talking uh, about where was God when all this stuff was happening to us. As a child in the childhood and stuff, and even throughout. I remember, you know, laying in a prison cell, me personally, and this is what I told this gentleman, and I wondered, where was God? Why wasn't God there helping me when I was 5? You know, uh, you know, where was he at? What was the purpose? Why did all this stuff happen to us? And that's a really good question. And there's a lot of people setting, and you don't have to be set in prison to be thinking of this. There's people out here, that's in chains, walking in freedom in a sense, free world, not locked behind bars, is what I'm trying to say. Because even though we're not behind walls, we can still be in chains, whether it's chains of addiction, depression, not understanding how our life ended up the way it did, and all that kind of stuff. But something I've learned since I turned my life over to Jesus and I started to explore and it's been amazing ever since if you've listened to any of my podcasts or read my recovery book that I created. Uh, y- uh, when I turned my life over to Jesus, it was instant. It was dramatic. It was emotional, and like I said, it was instant. Instant. I felt the Holy Spirit. I felt God all through my body and my heart, and ever since then, my life has definitely been an amazing ride. God is real, and we can try to justify things, blame God, deny, do all this stuff, cover our pain with drugs, alcohol. Um, we can cover our pain with a lot of stuff. And a lot of people do use drugs and alcohol to cover our pain. But in reality, God was there with us the whole time. I mean, the reality, and this is a fact, we live in a broken world. We live in a broken world with broken people. And that's just reality. And broken people do bad things to people. And it's not God making that broken person hurt a person and make them broken. That's not God doing that. Something that I learned. I finally learned after 60 years, because I was 60 years old when I turned my life over to God. It was in 2023. That God, you know, people that's walked through addiction can help people with addictions. God takes a broken person to fix a broken person. There's so much I've learned, and we had to, I had to, we have to walk through darkness to see the light, and I know God conditioned me all my life for this moment in time of my life, to carry the light of Jesus wherever I go. And um, the answer to freedom is Jesus. The answer to everything is Jesus. But we get so broken and so detached that we can't see that. We don't know the path to get there. We're searching, all through our life. We're searching. People will be, we're searching for freedom, right? We're searching for happiness. We want what we perceive like our neighbor has, the perfect life. But most people don't have a perfect life. I mean, I don't know if anybody has a perfect life but Jesus. Had to take a drink of Coke. I didn't used to drink Coke. Now I drink Coke all the time. But and finally, we find I found um freedom. Freedom is in Jesus. And the more I carry the message of Jesus and freedom and all that, the more I get back. And when I was talking to this gentleman today, it sparked me to make this podcast because it got me all japped up, because I know God's real. And I know God, conditioned me all my life for this moment. Like I've said that in another podcast that I recently made. And so that's what we do. I carry the message of light. The light is Jesus. That's why I go into the prison ministry. And I know a lot of people ask that question, where's God? Where's God when all this stuff's happening to me? And really that's the answer. We live in a broken world with broken people. And broken people do bad things. The people that walk in darkness hurt people. It's not God. God's not in their head telling them, hey, go hurt Bill. You know, we, broken people hurt broken people. And with all that, a broken person who finds Jesus can identify a broken person and can help them. Because the ultimate answer to freedom, like I said, is Jesus. And sometimes it's really hard for people to get to there, man. Actually, it's real hard for people to get there because, like I said, they don't believe God. They think their past is so dark that God can never forgive them. But no matter how dark our past is, God can redeem us. It's all we got to do is open our heart and ask Him to come into our heart. And then, because the people, ministries are created from inmates out of prison. I mean, I'm an ex-inmate. I got out in 1986. It's been a long time ago. But, because we lived in darkness, we walked dark paths, we hurt people, we've been hurt. So we're the perfect people once we turn our life and will over to care of God to go back and carry the message. Once we have that spark in us, once we have Jesus running our life, once we have, you know, once we're praying every day for Jesus's will, not my will. We want to do what Jesus wants us to do. We want to do what God wants us to do. And when we start doing that, it just comes back to us tenfold. We got the experience. We walked in darkness. We were broken. We were addicted to we were drug addicts. And who can help a drug addict better than a drug addict that's been redeemed? I don't think somebody can go to school and a psychologist can do what we do. And that's really my message of this podcast. One thing is where's God, and I hopefully I s- gave the right understanding for you to understand where God was. We live in a broken world with broken people. It comes down to that. And once we went through all we went through, and God has a purpose for us. And like I said, no one's life is so dark that God can't redeem us. There's no life so broken that God can't heal. There's no addiction so strong that God can't break. And if we just got to find that path to get to the point to turn our life and will over to care of God. And I created my recovery. I created a recovery program that addresses all that and leads all that. And I get to teach that program in Coastal State Prison here in Georgia twice a week. And I get so much out of that. It just, I can't teach it enough. And I'm expanding that, and I just want to, because broken people, God takes broken people to go and heal broken people. And that's what God's using me for. And I feel blessed. I feel it's an honor. I feel privileged. I believe it's a miracle that I'm 63. I love Jesus. I'm not in a cage, and I'm not dead. Obviously, I'm sitting here talking to you. But looking back in the darkness that I was living in and stuff, that could have all been totally different. But God had a purpose for me, just like He's got a purpose for everybody else. Whether you're sitting behind walls listening to this now, or you're sitting in an apartment or your house or your bedroom, and you're lacking understanding why all this bad stuff's happening to you and stuff. I tell you what, you turn your life and will over to care of God, and you start carrying the message of Jesus, it's going to open up doors that you couldn't imagine. You can never dream that you could feel this way, that the doors would open that you never thought could ever be possible. And like I said, the answer is Jesus. And but again, that's hard, when you're just sitting there telling someone like, yeah, yeah, yeah. People had said that to me, I got to be honest, when I was going through the gamut of, all my addiction and the prison system and the juvenile prisons and just all the pain and the hurt. You see a pastor or something that's kind of got that light in their eye and stuff and saying life's great. You're sitting there thinking, how can anybody ever think this life is great? Well, they're walking a different path than I was walking, but in that different path was walking carrying the message of Jesus. That simple. It's that simple. Um, and it's all we got to do is get honest with ourselves, and hopefully, God will put the right person in your path, that you'll hear the right thing at the right moment, and you'll l- look at a recovery program different. Mine's 12 steps to freedom recovery. And I got that workbook. But I found God the first time through Alcoholics Anonymous. I turned my life and my will over to care of God then. Now that's that, and they preach in AA, that's a spiritual program. It's not religion. It's not, and yeah, kind of, they don't like it when you talk about Jesus. Maybe not all of them are like that. Back in the day, it was like that for me. And I never went to church and stuff like that. I prayed to God, and he opened doors for me like 40 going west. I turned my life around. I didn't go back to prison anymore. As an adult, I was in prison 3 times. Bam, bam, bam. I didn't know any other way, and I was just in a lot of pain, mess, whatever. And you turn your life over to God, and things change. And working a program like my recovery program, when you get down and you work these steps honestly, and it's I got to be honest. I mean, it is difficult to a degree, but it ain't that difficult. It ain't something that we can't accomplish. Um, Somewhat kind of simple. We stop being in denial and stop blaming other people for our problems and stuff, and take responsibility for our actions and say, well, my life's unmanageable. I don't know how anybody sitting in prison can say, well, my life's not unmanageable. Your life's unmanageable. If you're listening to this in prison, I just want to be honest, and I'm not. I mean, I've sat there, and I understand. But if you're sitting there, there's an issue. Your life's unmanageable. It's got you in prison. If you've been in there twice, 3 times, 4 times, you know, you got to try something different. Um, and it, I hate to keep saying it, but Jesus is the answer. But a lot of times it's really hard to get there because we got all this baggage from our past. And that's why a recovery program is so important. Um, because you got step one, you got to, admit you got a problem. In step three, you turn your life and your will over to care of God. That's powerful words, that is, if you open your heart all the way up to God. And then in step four, you take a personal inventory, and that's where the pain comes in. And that's also where the pain, that's the beginning of healing. Um, and you could heal from whatever has happened to you in your past, no matter how dark it is, no matter what's happened, you can heal from that. And then you just work the other steps, and the last 3 steps is maintenance steps, 10, 11, and 12. Today I work, well, I work them all, but 12 step is having had a spiritual awakening. We carry this message to other people and practice these principles in all of our affairs. And the more I give it away, the more I get it back. And that's what keeps me going. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, I stopped doing all that stuff. I stopped sponsoring people. I stopped praying. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped helping people. I stopped praying, like all of it. And I ended up, um, you can imagine what the end result was. I didn't end up going to prison, but I had owned a real, you know, 15 years after I was out of prison. Well, 10 years after I was out of prison, I started selling real estate. But anyways, I ended up owning a real estate company. I lost all of it because of drugs and alcohol. And, just lost. And 9 years after that, I'm ready to kill myself. And the answer to everything is when I turned my life over to God, my life and my will over to care of God and started doing His will. I pray and ask for direction. I ask for God's will. I have asked Him to show me, direct me, give me the wisdom, the knowledge, the power to carry it out. His will, not my will, not Bill Snyder's will, because my will got me nowhere every time. I got the experience to carry the message to help people because I'm a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. I'm a recovered broken person. I'm a recovered spiritually broken person, and always looking for happiness and can never find it. But I wanted to create this podcast to, hopefully reach somebody about the understanding of where God was when we were growing up, and I hope I answered that. He was always there, but we live in a broken world. We got to just remember that people do bad stuff. There's broken people that hurt us and stuff, and that's not God hurting us. And we blame him and stuff, and then we don't turn our life over to God because we felt like He abandoned us, but He was always there, just waiting for us. And like I said, He conditions us for today, for our purpose, what our purpose is. And like I said, broken people help broken people. People with experience of drug addiction and all that mess help people with drug addictions and all that mess. And we're conditioned for it. And for me, I'm up to the task. I live it, eat it, breathe it. And I love what I do. I created this prison ministry, 12 Steps to Freedom. So to just expand and carry this message as far as I can go, everywhere to the ends of earth. Just carry the light. The light is Jesus. The answer is Jesus. And I try to get people there. And I wanted this prison ministry to last after I'm in heaven. I still want it to exist. That's why I created that ministry. And I just want to thank you for listening. I just had to get that out of my system. And I hope I reach somebody and help someone. If if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe and like my post, like my video. I would appreciate that, and follow me because I'm gonna keep posting these um, about the whole process, and I'm gonna be talking about my recovery program and walk through the steps of that, and hopefully something I can say can spark someone to turn their life over to Jesus and change your life because we don't have to live in turmoil. We don't have to live in depression. We don't have to live in blaming other people and stuff. But first step is we got to get honest with ourselves and realize that ain't everybody around us. Because you could be around a whole bunch of broken people. You can't change that. You can't, well, you can change that. Don't be around them. But you can't control other people. And I'll tell you one thing, there's one person that will never, ever let us down or hurt us, and that's God. And I want to thank you for listening to my podcast. Once again, subscribe to my channel, and you have a great day. God bless you, and thank you for listening.